All right, welcome everyone to our session 3 for Shulk Ignite. We're going to start with letting you know about a workshop that's coming up. This is on Friday. It's with a club that's called R Electric or Electric. They work with high performance electric vehicles. They have built their own actual electric car. And they're going to be hosting a workshop this Friday, February 26th at 6:30 p.m. till 8 p.m. And it's going to be about how they make their cars and why software development is so important to what they're doing. So when you go to these slides, you'll get to have the link here. You can sign up for that. That sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so what we're going to be going over today, we're going to be starting these sessions with a little bit of application, like an interesting slide about how software engineering is applied. So we're going to start with that. Then we'll do a quick review. We'll review what we went over last time about the scope and that global keyword. And then we'll go to the main content for today, which is going to be focusing around if statements. So these are conditional statements where we can choose what we want, what code we want to run, depending upon what condition we have. And so we're going to need to have some Booleans to help with that. So we'll talk about what those are. And then some operators that are important for that as well, relational and logical operators. Okay, so let's talk about the Mars Perseverance rover. So this one has recently been in the news. It's going to be landing. So the rover is going to be scanning the Martian surface. As it enters the atmosphere, it's going to need to use some complex algorithms, and it's going to be looking for the safest landing spot. There's over 5,000 potential sites, but it's going to have to figure out which one's going to be the best spot for it to land. And then it's also going to need to calculate the trajectory for opening its parachute to be using for that particular landing site. And then the rover is also equipped with a navigation system, and that uses data from its optical sensors. And there's also some AI that it uses to be navigating through the surface of Mars on its very own. So a lot of software that's needed for this rover to actually do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so before we get to this, to a bit of a review, we're going to have a quick poll question for everyone. So this is just asking how you found the end of session exercises from last time. All right, okay, we've got answers to that. So we're going to move on now. Going to go to a bit of a review of what we were doing last time. So you'll recall that we were talking about variables and about manipulating those variables. And you have to remember that these variables do have a concept of scope. And so if you are if you create them inside the setup function, then you won't be able to use them inside your draw function. So to have the global scope, you're going to have to put that variable outside both those functions. And then to use them inside your draw function, you will need to use the global keyword, which lets you then work with those variables. So here's the example for that. So we can create our X variable as a global variable. You can see it's outside both our setup and our draw. And now inside here, we want to use that X variable to be keeping track of our X position for our circle. So to be able to actually change it, we're going to need to we have to use the global keyword here with the X variable, and then this code will work the way that we expect it to. And the circle will then have its X position increasing, and it'll be moving along the screen. Okay, so we're going to get to our main content for today. So we're going to be starting talking about Booleans and comparisons. So a Boolean it's a fancy word that means that it has one of two values. So it's a type of value, and it can only be a true or it can be a false. So these are going to be useful in assessing logical statements and when we're doing comparisons. So it's going to be the result of comparison can be either being true or it can be false. So here's two examples. We have that in high school is true. So yes, it is true that you are in high school, and it's summer is equal to false. Right now it is not summer, it is still winter, I believe. And notice that the syntax for this, that the first letter has to be capitalized. So the true, the T has to be uppercase, and the false, the F has to be uppercase too. So we have some comparison operators. So these allow us to compare any two values, and we have a whole list of the different ones here. So we can compare whether two values are less than, whether the first one is less than the other one, whether it's greater than, whether it's equal to, whether it's not equal to. So the result of these comparison operators is going to give us that Boolean value type. It's going to give us either a true or it's going to give us a false. So when we compare two values, one can be it's either true that the first one is less than the other one, or it's false. And same for all the other ones. If you're comparing two values, either they are equal to each other or they are not. So when we do this comparison, it will give us a true or a false. And a reminder here that you'll notice the comparison for equals, it uses two equal signs. And that's because the single equal sign is used for assigning values. So be careful about using the right ones. So when you're trying to check that two values are equal, so when you're comparing them, you'll want to use the two equal signs. And when you are assigning two variables, you'll be using a single equal sign. All right, so here's our examples now. So for the first one here, we are comparing 1 and 4, and our operator there is less than. So we're asking, is 1 less than 4? And 1 is less than 4. That is true. And so it's going to print out the true there. So I'm going to bring in the code here, and we can try this out here. So I do my print here, 1 less than 4, and that's going to give us a value of true. Gives us true. For the next one, we have, we're assigning -5 to a variable, to our a value. And then we're asking, is a greater than or equal to 0? And so the value of a is going to be -5, and -5 is a negative value, so it's not greater than or equal to 0. So that's going to give us a false. So is a greater than or equal to 0? That is not true, so it's going to give us a false. If we were to flip this around, it would be true, and that would give us the true value. And one more example here. So we have two variables, x and y. We have 0 for the first one, 57. And then we're asking, are they not equal to each other? Are they different? So 0 and 57 are different values. So yes, it is true that x is not equal to y. So here we have our first variable. Our second variable, y is equal to 57. And comparing whether they are not equal to each other. X does not equal to y. That is true, that they are not the same. And so it's giving us true. Okay, so now we are going to use these comparisons in our if statements. So we're going to talk about what if statements are. So the if statement, it lets you run some code only if a condition is true. So you'll have a condition that's you want to be checking, and then based on whether that condition is true, we'll be deciding whether to be running these statements afterwards. So only if our condition is true will these statements afterwards be running. So it will, in the true case, it will go through each of these statements, and then whatever we have after, following after that if statement, you'll keep running whatever's after that. In the false case, it's not going to run those statements that we have inside there. It's going to skip over all of them and continue with whatever we have after our if statement. All right, so for this example here, we are comparing our house temperature, comparing it to seeing whether it's cold, whether it's warm. So our first statement here, we have our if statement. We start with if, and then we have our condition. So we're asking, is the house temperature less than 20? So if our house temperature were to be 18, for example, that would be less than 20. This would be a true condition. It would be true, and so it would run the code that we have inside of there, and it would set the furnace on equals true, and then our furnace would be turned on. You'll notice with the syntax that we have these colons right at the end of that, and that just helps you see what is going on. That the code afterwards is part of the if statement. Part of the syntax is also this indentation. So you need to press your tab key to get a indentation to here, and that's what makes the statements inside here part of that statement. Then furnace on is false. Okay, so we're going to go through this first example here. So let's say we want to create a disappearing ball. So what we're going to have is when our mouse X is on the left side, we're going to be able to see the circle. And then when we move our mouse to the right side, it's not going to be drawn. And we're going to need to use an if statement in order to implement that. All right, so we'll start with defining our setup and defining our draw functions. So for that setup, we'll just put in our size, make sure it's big enough. Now we'll create our draw function. Inside here, the first thing we'll do is to actually draw the background. And I'm going to create this is going to be a light green color. I'll add in a line here that's going to separate the two halves, and it's just going to help make it a little clearer what's going on. That's just drawing a line down the middle. I'm going to make this just a bit bigger. And now let's start with just drawing the ball. So let's make sure that it's red. So we'll give it all the red value and none of the green and blue. Now we'll draw that circle, and we'll make it follow the mouse. So we pass in the mouse X, mouse Y, give it a diameter of 30. So now when we run this, our ball is going to be following our mouse wherever it goes. So now we want to make it so that when our mouse is on this side of the screen, that it doesn't get drawn. So that means that we only want the mouse to the circle to be drawn when when our mouse X is on the left to the left of this line down the middle. So that condition that we want to use is that our mouse X is less than halfway between there, which we have as 250. So now this code, these two lines here, I've indented these parts to be inside that if statement. So that means that these will only run when our mouse X is less than 250. If it's not, if it's greater, then these two parts will not be running. So let's run that. Now you'll see that when my mouse is on this side, it's being drawn. I cross over to the other side, it's no longer being drawn. Okay, so what's going on here, we're going to go to the else case as well. So what we showed was that we had the if statement, and we had that it was choosing to run what was inside our if statement, but we can also have an else section. So this else part will only run if when the condition is not matching. So this is essentially it's creating a branch in that code, and when it gets to this to that if statement, it's going to make a decision. It's going to check, is that our condition true? So in this example here that we're starting with, we're getting a phone call, and then that condition that we're trying to check is whether we are driving. And we will branch depending upon whether that's true or whether it's not true. So in the case that yes, we are driving, we will go to sending the call to voicemail. And if we're not, then we will let the call through. So these two parts correspond to these two sections. So your code under after the if part and here, that's going to correspond to when the condition is true, and the else case is going to correspond to the case that the condition is not true. So the execution, the way that's going to flow is that whatever you have in that first part, it's only going to be executed when the condition is true. So you can see it's checking the conditions, it's true, it runs the code there. And then whatever follows after your if statement, it will then go back to that, and it'll keep running that. If we are in the else statement, so the condition is false, it will go run to whatever is inside our else statement, and it will come back as well to whatever is after our if statement. So only one of these cases will happen. If the condition is true, it will run one set of code. If it's not true, if it's false, it'll be running the other ones. Both of them will never happen. And in both cases, whatever is after that if statement, it's always going to get run. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit to our example. So we're going to add that else case. So in this example here, what we're trying to do is to make it so that when our mouse cursor is on the right side, we are drawing a mirrored version of the ball. So you'll see that we change the fill style a little bit, and then we are modifying where that position is. So we take the width of our screen, and so we subtract the X position. That's going to give us the mirroring effect. So we already have our ball working where it disappears. So now we want to add in the else case in here. So we'll add in the else, and then make sure that it's indented here. We can change the fill style here. We'll make it a little bit lighter. And now when we draw the circle, we're going to change the X position a little bit, subtract it from 500 instead. And the other two parts are the same. So now when we run this, the else case is going to match when our mouse is on the other side. And you can see that the circle is being drawn on the other side, and the color of it is a little bit of a lighter shade too. I know that it's a little bit laggy, but that's just what we have to work with. All right, so we're on to our quick question, our first quick question. So in this example here, have a look at the code on the right. So we have an if statement that's looking at, is the mouse X greater than 250? We've got two pieces of code in here. And then we're going to, at the very end, there's a circle being drawn. And so the question is, what is the background going to be? What is the ball what color the ball is going to be when the mouse X is 100? All right, so we had a majority saying that the background would be blue, the ball would be yellow. So that is the correct answer. Most of you did have that correct. The other common answer, next runner-up, was that the ball would be green. So let's go through and see why it's actually going to be yellow. So I'm going to draw on the screen here to show what's happening here. So our mouse x is going to be 100. So this value is at 100. And we have our if statement is this whole part in here. And it's got the two parts. We've got the main part and we have that else part. So it starts by checking the condition here. Is mouse x greater than 250? 100 is 100 greater than 250. That is not true. So this one comes out to being false. So that means that we're not going to be running this code here. We're going to be instead going down to our else case, and we're going to be running these two pieces of code here. So we go in here, we set the background to be blue, as expected. Then we go to the next line here. So we set the fill style to green. But then after that, we are still going to jump out of this whole if statement, continue running this code here. And so the fill style yellow is going to be, this piece is going to be run as well. And that's going to override the value that we had before. And so it is going to be yellow instead of green. All right, so now we're going to go on to our first exercise. So I saw that one person said there was had a bit of an issue. So when you go to the breakout rooms, you'll be able to ask your mentor about that. One question about the ignite points when they're updated. Not I think they're updated just when whenever the people are actually have the time to update them. So it's just on a rolling basis that those points will be updated. All right, so we're at our first exercise. So for this one, you're going to be drawing a circle that's going to be moving across the screen. But once it gets to the very end of the screen, we want to make it so that it teleports back to the very start. And it's going to basically be repeating that again. Whenever it gets to the end, it jumps back to the very start. All right, so we'll put you into breakout rooms for that. And we'll give you 10 minutes to work on that. All right, so I will go through this exercise. So we needed to use that if statement so that when it reached the end of the screen, that it would start back at the beginning. So let's just start with getting the circle drawn and having move across the screen. So I'll do a bit of a setup here, just get the size big enough here. Now I have my draw function. I'll just start with putting in the background. So for the background, I'll make it a black background. And then I'll start with just drawing a white circle. So the fill style needs to be white for that. And then I will draw a circle as well. I'll use the fill circle here. And I will just put it at the top left for now. So I'll just set the X, Y, 20 and 20. And the diameter, I'll choose a 40 for the diameter. So now if I draw that, you can see the circles in the top left, but it's not going to be moving yet. So if we want to be updating that X value, its position, we're going to need to turn this into a variable. So I'll put my variable at the very top in here. And I'll start it at X equals 20. And because I want to use it inside my draw function, I need to use the global keyword. And now I have a X variable in here. And I can replace that X value in here with the X. And to make it actually move, so right now it's just going to be staying in that one spot. So to actually make it move, I need to be incrementing the value of that. So I'll add x plus equals 4 for that. And now it's going to start moving across the screen. But you'll notice that once it moves off the edge, it's just going to keep going. It's never going to come back. So to make it come back, what we want to do is when it reaches the very end, we want it to get reset. So we can put that in here. We need to add in an if statement. And what is our condition going to be? Well, our condition, we want to check that the x value is if it's greater than the edge of the screen. So we need to figure out how far that is. And if so, then we will be resetting that value. So if x is greater than, and the edge we have is 200 is the width. Now, if it hits 200, it's just going to be still a little bit on the edge. So I'll add in the actual radius. And so plus 20, that will mean that it's completely off the edge. And now for what we want to run, what's the code we want to run when that happens? Well, we want the x to go all the way back to the start. So we'll reset the x back to the beginning. I think I will just move this around a little bit here so that it's, I'll just have that x plus equals 4 first there. Okay, so now it's moving across the screen. Once it hits the end, it jumps back to the very beginning there. And it's going to just keep doing that. All right, so that was the code that we needed for that. So now we're going to go to a little bit more complicated if statements. So we're going to have the elif statements. So this idea here is that if we want to have multiple branches, so what we had previously was we had the case when the condition was true and the case when the condition was not true, but we can also chain multiple ones of these together. So in this example here, we have our first condition checking is the price greater than 40, and if it is, we will simply go to the whatever code is inside of it. But if it's not greater than 40, then we will go to the next one, and we have another condition that we'll be checking here. So here we'll be checking, is the price greater than 30? And then if that one is, then we'll print out that it's a good deal. If this condition doesn't match, then we'll go on to the very last case. So this diagram here shows what's going on, and it has the outlined here what's happening when our price is equal to 33. So if our price is equal to 33, we start with that first condition at the top. Is the price greater than 40? Well, 33 is not greater than 40, so we go to the no part. And now we are on our next condition here. Is the price greater than 30? And yes, 33 is greater than 30, so we go to the yes part, and we are going to be running whatever's inside here. Then after that, we break out of that whole statement, and we'll run whatever is at the very end. If that wasn't the case, then we would go to the no, and we would keep going we would have the else case here. So one thing to note is that you can have multiple of these elif. So elif is that abbreviation for the else if, but you can have multiple ones of these, so you can keep chaining however many that you want. And let's do an example with this one. So let's go back to our circle in here. And so let's set it up so that we change the color of that circle depending upon what its position is. So we can have that if its x is less than 100, we will have a fill style of white. We can have is else if the x is less than 150. Let's give it a different color. Let's make it a green color. We can have multiple parts in here as well. We can have it's less than 175. So it's going to go through quite a few different colors here. And let's put in the last color in here. We'll have, let's put in a purple color. So as the circle moves across, the x value is going to be changing. It's going to start out being less than 100, So then the color will be white. As it keeps moving through, these different cases will match and its colors will change. So let's try that out. So we can see that for the first half, it was white, it goes to green, then red, then purple. So it's going through all those different parts, and it's changing its color based on whatever X that we decided corresponds to whatever color we want. Okay, so far we've only had pretty simple conditions. So now we're going to look at how can we use logical statements like and or. So if we want to have express this idea that programming is fun and programming is useful, well, this statement is going to be true because both of those are true, that programming is fun, and it is also true that programming is useful. If one of those parts was not true, so if we try to make a statement saying that Halloween has candy, that part is true, but Halloween has Easter eggs, that part is not true. So if we're saying that Halloween has candy and Halloween has Easter eggs, that overall statement is false because one part of it is not true. And there's also an or logical operator that we can use. So this one is going to be if one of those things are true or both of them. So Halloween has candy, that part is true. Halloween has Easter eggs, that part we know that's not true. But the statement as a whole that Halloween has candy or Halloween has Easter eggs, that is true because one of those things is true. So in Python, we have the logical operators. So we have the and the or. There is one more, which is the not one. So we'll go through these three different ones. So for the first one, you can see we have a condition on one side. We're saying 5 is greater than 3. And we have another one on the other side, 6 is greater than 3. So when we're trying to match this, what's going to happen is we're going to look at the first condition. We're going to ask, is 5 greater than 3? And that is true. I'll put a T for true. And on this side, 6 is greater than 3. That part is true as well. So true and true is going to give us a true value. For the second portion, this one is the same. So it is true. Is 6 less than 3? Well, this part is false. So if we have something that's true and false, that results in a false because one of them is not true. For the or statement here, we have the 5 greater than 3 again. This piece is true. 6 is less than 3. This one is false. But with the or, we only need one of them to be true. So true or false, well, that does give us true because one side is true. The last one here, 5 less than 3, that one is false. This side is also false. Both of them are false, so we are getting a result of false. And the not one, all this one does is flip it around. So 6 is less than 3, that one is false, but with the not false is going to give us true. And with this one here, not true is going to give us a false. So the not is just flipping whatever we have. Okay, so now we're on to our second quick question. So in here, we are using these ands and these ors in our if statements here. And we're checking whether the mouse X is greater than a certain value and using some kind of combination with our other side, looking at the mouse Y. And based on that, whether depending upon which one is matching, we'll have a different color. So here, if the first one is matching, it'll be a red. Second one is going to be that green. The last one would be a blue. And we draw that circle. So the question then is that what color will that circle be if we have mouse X 150 and mouse Y of 50? This might you might have to take a minute to walk through this. That's okay. All right, so we had almost 60% answering that was green. So that's really great. That is the correct answer. That is the green. So well done. No one chose black. I'm sorry about that. That's too bad. Okay, we had blue was the runner-up. So it looked like it was between whether the second one or the last one was matching. Okay, so let's walk through this, and I'll show you how we can figure out what this is supposed to be. So our mouse X is at 150. So this value in here we have is 150. For our mouse Y, this one is 50. So when this code is running, it starts at the very top. So this is our whole if statement. It starts at the top, and we're going to be trying to check this condition in here. So it starts with the first side of it, mouse X greater than 100. So 150 greater than 100, well, this one is true. Now it's looking at the other side. Is the 50 greater than 100? Well, this part is not true. This side is false. So when we combine this together, true and false, that gives us a false value when we try to do true and false. So that means we're not going to be running this code. We're going to skip over that. We have to go to the next else if here. So this mouse X in here is 150. Again, it's not changing. This side here is 50 for the mouse Y. So this time we have is a less than. So 150 less than 100. This one is not true. That one is a false. But the other side is the 50 less than 100. That side is a true. So because we have the or in here, we only need one side. So false or true. That's going to give us a true value at the end. So that means that we are going to run whatever's inside here. So we'll set this fill style here. And then remember what happens then is that it jumps out completely and it's going to go to whatever is after that. So this part in here is not run because we had this match in here. So that's going to mean that our fill style is going to be the green color. Oops, just want to clear that off the screen first. Okay, and I will just show the code for that as well. So let's just see how that looks when we actually try to run this out. So we need to add in a little bit more in here. Okay, so here I've created some lines here so that we can see where those midpoints are. So that first one, mouse X greater than 100 and mouse Y is mouse X greater than 100, mouse Y is greater than 100. That's supposed to give us that red. So we can see that that's only happening in the bottom right-hand corner. So that's when our Y is on this side, Y is greater than 100 and the X is 100. And everywhere else around here, we can see that that matches the second statement. Now you might think that this last one never, oh, I think I just crashed.
All right, yeah, looks like Chris just crashed.
I am back. Don't worry.
Okay, he's good.
That is unfortunate. Okay, we should be back. I think that my computer is not liking all this intensive processing. That is too bad. Okay, I need to share the screen again. All right, I'll do that.
Time to get the RTX.
And that should be, okay, that should be back there. Okay, so we got this got this back to here. So as I was saying that it almost looks like this last piece here will never match. But you'll notice that these greater than, less than, it's not actually looking for the equals. So there is one little edge case here. If our mouse x is exactly 100 or our mouse y is exactly 100, none of these are actually going to be matching. They're all going to be false. And so that actually corresponds to this very center point there when we're exactly 100. 100 and 100 is going to make it blue right in the center. Okay, so this is basically what we just went through. So you can combine that together, check that mouse x greater than value, mouse y is greater than that. That corresponds to that bottom right-hand corner there. And you can have the else statements. So your exercise is going to be very similar to this. So for your second exercise, you want to make it so that there's a different color in each of the 4 quadrants of the screen. So you're going to have to use multiple else if blocks for that. So we're going to break you out into breakout rooms, and you're going to have, we'll do 10 minutes for the, a little bit less than 10 minutes. We'll do 8 minutes for that. Slide here that talks about this not operator. So we didn't show that one, but it works as you expect. Here we have like green eggs is not true. We have false. Liking ham is also false. So in the statement, we're trying to see, we're asking, do we not like green eggs and not like green eggs? So not false would be true on this side. Not liking ham is false. So not false is going to give us a true. And so both sides are true. That means that we are going to be printing out, I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am. Okay, one last feature that we are going to introduce for a bit of interaction is for the mouse clicks. So far we talked about the variables, the mouse x and the mouse y, and there is one additional variable that's called mouse underscore is underscore pressed. And this one holds that Boolean value of either a true or false. It will be true whenever you are clicking down on the mouse button, and it'll be false when you are not clicking down. So this is useful when you combine that with the if statements. So we're going to have one example here. So I'm just going to paste that code into here, as we've already gone over the if statements. So I'll pop that in here. Oh, I think I need a slightly bigger size. Okay, so we can see we have the circle here. Right now, my mouse is not pressed, as it says, mouse is not pressed. Now when I click, then the mouse, it changes, says mouse is pressed. So whenever I hold down the mouse button, it's going to be changing. So pretty straightforward. We are just using that variable mouse is pressed, and it's only true when my mouse is actually down, and when it's not down, it's going to be false. And so in that if statement, you can test those 2 different cases. All right, so that is all the content that for today. Just a few final things to go through. As a reminder about the certificates, that if you attend 6 out of the 8 sessions, you'll be eligible for a completion certificate. That doesn't include the session 0, just the ones after that. So as long as at the most you can miss 2 and still get that certificate. And lastly, about submitting exercises. When you're submitting them, it's preferable that you have them in a single file. So just use multiple cells for each exercise. So just put it into one file and use multiple cells. Okay, so now we're at the exercises. So for the bug busters, this looks pretty similar to what we were showing, except the ball is going to be bouncing back and forth instead. For the second one, we're using the mouse is pressed. So when your mouse is pressed, you're drawing a little bit differently than when it's not pressed. It's a bit different there. For the Pythonic lava, we have this ball which is going to be bouncing around. and we have a bit of gravity in here. All right, so now we're going to go into the breakout rooms till the end. So it's going to give you a little over 15 minutes, and you can start working on these exercises with your mentors. If you have questions about that, I saw this one in the chat, just ask your mentor about that.